So I want you to imagine being like 10 years old and realizing that learning a new language isn't just for, your education.
Right. It's not just a school assignment.
No, not at all. It's literally the only way you can intercept your older sister's plot to have you poisoned.
Which is just a staggering reality for a kid.
Totally staggering. And that's why today we're doing a deep dive where we are putting aside the dramatic eyeliner, right? We are completely ignoring the famous romances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony.
Yeah, we're skipping all the Hollywood stuff today.
Exactly. Instead, we are unlocking the palace doors of ancient Alexandria to look really closely at the childhood of Cleopatra VII.
Because honestly, to understand the queen who eventually outmaneuvered entire empires, you have to look at the child who survived the Ptolemaic court first.
You really do.
And the sources we're digging into today, they strip away centuries of Roman propaganda. They focus entirely on those formative years.
And what they reveal is, well, it's an environment defined by this crazy collision of unimaginable wealth and just constant suffocating peril.
Yeah, suffocating is definitely the right word for it.
Right. So our mission today is to figure out how someone builds the mental architecture to become a legendary historical figure. Because you aren't simply born with that kind of, that ruthless political genius.
No, you're forged into it. It's an active process.
Yes, you're forged into it. And what becomes very clear in these texts is that the blueprint for Cleopatra was drawn in an environment that functioned as a beautiful, terrifying trap.
It really was. I mean, Alexandria was the absolute pinnacle of the ancient world at this time.
Unbelievably wealthy.
Right. So let's look at the sensory reality of her daily life. Imagine you wake up to the Mediterranean breeze drifting through these sweeping courtyards, all built of imported marble.
Sounds amazing so far.
It does. You're surrounded by the sound of ornate fountains, the rustle of fine silks from an army of attendants, and there's this constant hum of the most elite scholars, brought in from the Library of Alexandria just to tutor you.
And this is the bit, but the sources make it clear that this physical beauty was a very, very thin veneer over a deeply paranoid reality.
A completely paranoid reality.
Yeah. It wasn't just a nice palace. It was an environment where every single servant, every tutor, every guard was a potential operative for a rival political faction.
Exactly. I like to think of it like the Ptolemaic court functioned less like a traditional royal family and more like a massive corporate board.
Okay, I like that comparison.
Right. But it's a board where no one agrees on the CEO, and every single board member has their own private security force.
Wow. So it's basically a mob movie.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
In this environment, firing an opponent didn't mean giving them a severance package. It literally meant assassinating them.
So how does a child even process that kind of whiplash? Because it's like growing up in this spectacular jewel-encrusted fishbowl, but it is secretly filled with sharks.
That is the perfect analogy.
You're surrounded by opulence, but there is zero baseline security. You've got spectacular parties on one hand and the literal constant threat of a knife in the dark on the other.
And the way a child processes that is, well, you survive by becoming hyper-observant.
You have to be.
Yeah, naivety is a fatal flaw in Alexandria. A child in that environment learns to survive by closely watching the adults who hold power.
They study the mechanisms of control.
Right. And for Cleopatra, the primary case study and arguably the most flawed model in her entire life was her father, Ptolemy XII.
Okay, yes, let's talk about her dad. Because the texts paint Ptolemy XII as this tragically weak figure.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he was known as the flute player, which already doesn't project immense royal authority, right?
No, it really doesn't strike fear into the hearts of your enemies.
Right. But I'm actually struggling to just accept the label of weak that he gets. Was he actually weak, or was he just a geopolitical realist playing a terrible hand?
That's a really good question, actually.
Because think about it. Rome was aggressively expanding across the Mediterranean. Most independent kings were just getting totally wiped out. Wasn't his reliance on Rome just pure pragmatism?
Well, it might look like pragmatism on paper, but the way he executed it was an absolute disaster for Egypt's sovereignty.
Okay, how so?
To understand why he was weak, we have to look at the economics of his reign. He didn't just politically align with Rome. He essentially bankrupted his own country to pay massive personal bribes to Roman politicians.
Politicians like Julius Caesar, right?
Yes, exactly. He was paying off Caesar just to be officially recognized as a friend of Rome.
Oh, man. So he was basically financing his own protection racket.
That is exactly what he was doing. And it gets worse. He outsourced the military protection of his throne to foreign mercenaries because he couldn't trust his own army.
Or his own people, probably.
Right, he couldn't trust anyone. And the immense financial strain of all those Roman bribes meant he had to aggressively raise taxes on the Egyptian citizens.
Which never goes over well.
No, it made the citizens despise him, which ironically made him even more reliant on those Roman soldiers to suppress his own population.
It's a total death spiral. And Cleopatra is just a kid watching this death spiral happen in real time.
She's seeing it all unfold.
She is seeing that her father holds the title of king, sure, but he has entirely outsourced his monopoly on violence.
Yeah.
But wait, so did she admire him? Or was she just deeply disappointed that she was going to inherit a political house of cards? How do you reconcile a child loving a father who is actively destroying her inheritance?
It's fascinating because the historical record points to a really complex emotional contradiction.
Really?
Yeah, she remained incredibly loyal to him. I mean, later in life, she styled herself Philopator, which literally means father-loving.
Oh, wow.
But she absolutely absorbed his failures as a political blueprint of what not to do.
A blueprint of failure.
Exactly. The lesson she took wasn't just, don't be weak. The specific chilling mechanism she understood was that a king who needs permission to rule has already begun to lose his crown.
Because power that is borrowed is not power at all?
Right. It's just a delayed surrender. He demonstrated the terrifying fragility of a throne propped up by outsiders.
Man. And while her father is providing this masterclass in political fragility, her mother is providing a completely different lesson through her total absence.
Yes. The Ghost Queen.
Because historically speaking, Cleopatra's mother practically vanishes from the record, right?
She really does. She disappears entirely from official documents around 69 BC.
Which is right around the time Cleopatra is born.
Exactly. And we don't know definitively what happened. Did she die? Was she exiled? Did she simply fall out of favor and get pushed into the shadows? We just don't know.
But the void she left was highly instructive.
Very much so.
It proves that your title doesn't protect you from erasure. I mean, you can be the Queen of Egypt and the state apparatus can just delete you from history.
It really reinforces the idea that nobody is truly safe.
So you have a father showing you the dangers of outsourcing your strength and a mother whose absence shows you the danger of irrelevance. So naturally, because her father was actively hemorrhaging authority to Rome, the power vacuum inside the palace was being filled by the only people close enough to grab it.
Siblings.
Right, her siblings. Now, you would normally think a shared enemy unites a family. They are all watching Rome encroach. Shouldn't they band together to protect the dynasty?
Well, see, you are applying a modern definition of family to the Ptolemaic dynasty.
Am I?
Yeah, because the Ptolemies didn't view siblings as allies. The entire structural mechanism of their dynasty pitted them against one another.
Oh, right, because of the incest.
Yes. We are talking about a ruling class that practiced sibling marriage and co-ruling to keep the bloodline pure.
They followed the ancient pharaonic tradition, but politically that creates an absolute nightmare.
A total nightmare. Think about it. If your brother is also your legally mandated co-ruler and potentially your future husband.
He is, by definition, your biggest political rival.
Precisely. Power in Egypt couldn't be cleanly divided. It could only be shared uneasily until someone took it all.
So let's look at the roster of siblings.
Okay, so Cleopatra has an older sister, Berenice IV. She has a younger sister, Arsinoe, and two younger brothers, Ptolemy XIII and Ptolemy XIV.
And any one of them has a legitimate claim to the throne if the others happen to drop dead.
Yep. In this system, power is a zero-sum game. Sharing blood meant you were automatically a target.
So it's basically a twisted, high-stakes game of musical chairs where losing means losing your life.
That's a great way to put it. A brother or a sister could be, trusted to plot with you over breakfast to outmaneuver a Roman diplomat.
Mm-hmm.
But then they could be plotting to have your wine poisoned by dinner to consolidate their own faction's power.
At what exact point does a kid realize their own brother might take them out? Who do you even talk to?
Nobody safely.
If you're a child in that environment, you clearly can't befriend your siblings. But what about the people outside the royal bloodline? The noble girls, the daughters of high-ranking servants?
Even there, every relationship in the palace was highly transactional.
Really? Even with the servants' kids?
Oh, especially with them. If you befriend a noble girl, you have to assume her father is using her to extract information from you.
Wow.
If you tell a secret to a maid, that secret has a market value. It will absolutely be sold to an enemy faction.
So you literally can't trust anyone.
The sources specifically note that in the Alexandrian court, True friendship was structurally impossible because, and this is a quote, in a palace, even friendship has years around it.
Even friendship has ears around it. That is so bleak. Every single interaction was an intelligence gathering operation.
Every single one.
So it's total isolation in a palace filled with thousands of people. You can't socialize, you can't just play outside, you can't be a normal kid.
No, you definitely can't.
But all of that childhood energy and anxiety, it has to go somewhere, right?
Yeah, and for Cleopatra, it goes into rigorous tactical preparation.
She just started studying.
She channeled all that isolation into intense education. She had access to the scholars of the Library of Alexandria, remember?
Right, the smartest minds in the world.
Exactly. And the texts describe her not just passively reading, but aggressively studying philosophy, medicine, astronomy.
Medicine, like how to heal people.
Well, more like the chemistry of poisons and perfumes. She armed herself with knowledge.
That makes total sense. And her version of childhood games reflects this perfectly, doesn't it? She isn't playing hide and seek.
No, she's playing strategy games.
Yeah, she is moving miniature ships to understand naval blockades and fleet strategy.
She is imitating royal ceremonies, practicing the exact physical posture required to sit through a banquet without showing any micro-expressions.
Faking her emotions so nobody knows what she's thinking.
Right. She is mastering the art of the mask. She's practicing how to observe the adults around her without looking like she is observing them.
But honestly, if we want to understand the true mechanism of her survival, we have to look at her language acquisition.
Oh, absolutely. This is the crucial part.
Because this is the detail that completely rewired how I view her. Most of the Ptolemaic rulers, her ancestors who ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years, they only spoke Greek.
Right. They relied entirely on translators to govern the Egyptian populace.
Which is crazy to think about.
Well, that was just the standard operating procedure for a ruling elite that views itself as culturally superior to the people it governs.
But Cleopatra completely broke that mold.
She did. She learned the native Egyptian language, which was huge. But she didn't stop there.
No, she learned Ethiopian, Troglodyte, Hebrew, Arabic, Syriac, Median, and Parthian.
9 languages in total.
That is incredible. It's like a kid learning complex raw machine coding just so you can secretly read the group chat where your family is plotting against you.
That's exactly what it was. She eliminated the middleman.
She didn't just become a good diplomat, she became her own personal intelligence agency.
Yes, because if you rely on a translator, you have to trust that the translator isn't on your older sister's payroll.
And they probably are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you are walking down a corridor and 2 foreign dignitaries or 2 servants are whispering in mead,
You have the advantage.
you know the threat before the threat even realizes you are listening. She learned languages specifically so she could identify the plots against her without ever needing to ask a translator what was being said.
That level of constant vigilance sounds absolutely exhausting. I mean, every waking moment is an exercise in threat detection.
It's pure survival mode.
You are straining to catch a misplaced word in an obscure dialect just to ensure you survive the week.
Right.
But all of this tension, this hypervigilant studying, this theoretical knowledge of palace betrayal, it eventually has to crash into reality, right?
Oh, it did. It crashed into reality spectacularly when Cleopatra was about 11 years old.
Okay, set the scene for us.
This is the moment the theoretical danger of her family became absolute historical fact.
We are talking about the events of 58 BC, right?
Yes. So remember how her father, Ptolemy XII, had bankrupted the country, paying off Rome?
The protection racket, yeah.
Right. Well, the citizens of Alexandria finally had enough of the crushing taxes and his general weakness. They revolted.
They kicked him out.
Yep. Her father was forced to flee his own kingdom and go into exile. The person who steps up to take the newly vacated throne is her oldest sister, Berenice IV.
So Berenice seizes power and completely usurps her father.
Exactly.
And for 3 years, young Cleopatra just watches her older sister rule, knowing that at any moment, Berenice could decide her younger siblings are a threat to her new crown and just have them quietly removed.
Which was a very real possibility. She is seeing the mechanism of the Ptolemaic family play out in real time, right in front of her.
Blood means nothing.
Blood means absolutely nothing. The throne is everything. But the definitive realization, the real turning point, comes 3 years later.
When our dad comes back.
Yes. Ptolemy XII doesn't just accept his exile. He goes back to Rome, leverages even more massive debt, and marches back into Egypt with a heavily armed Roman legion.
Wow.
He takes back his throne by brute force.
And what he does next to secure that throne is just chilling.
It is.
He has his own daughter, Berenice, executed.
He kills his eldest child to consolidate his position.
Unbelievable.
For an 11 or 12-year-old Cleopatra, witnessing this completely shatters any remaining illusion of family.
I mean, how could it not?
This isn't a hypothetical threat of poison in a cup anymore. This is the king having your sister put to death.
So this is the moment the child officially dies and the politician is born.
Essentially, yes. But she synthesizes everything she has learned in that single moment.
She understands that her father's weakness led to rebellion,
And her sister's ambition led to usurpation.
and ultimately restoring power required Roman steel and familial blood.
Exactly. This specific historical realization matters so much because it is the exact moment she understood that the palace in Alexandria wasn't a home.
Right.
It was her first battlefield.
Which completely reframes how we look at her legacy.
It really does.
I mean, Cleopatra didn't just magically possess the political brilliance to handle Julius Caesar and Mark Antony later in life.
No, she wasn't born with it.
She was forged in a crucible where a single misstep, trusting the wrong translator or ignoring an ambitious sibling, literally meant death.
The ultimate lesson from these sources is that Cleopatra didn't choose power. Power found her when she was far too young, and it demanded blood.
It demanded a complete sacrifice of her innocence.
Yeah. She learned early on that a throne is never simply inherited. It must be fought for, violently defended, every single day.
When you examine that starting environment, this twisted corporate board of a palace where firing someone meant executing them, you really can't be surprised when the child who survives it grows up to be the most ruthless, observant political strategist of her era.
No, it makes perfect sense. The tools people use to navigate the world as adults are almost always shaped by the specific threats of their early environment.
Totally.
It is a fascinating lens through which we can view behavior and leadership even today.
It really is. And I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought, because it's wild how drastically a person's starting environment dictates the tools they use later in life.
Oh, completely.
So next time you look at the adults running the world, or even just the people navigating the politics in your own workplace, ask yourself, what invisible battlefields did they grow up on that taught them how to play the game they're playing today?
That's a great question to ask.
Because the weapons we use in the present were almost always forged in the quiet, unseen survival games of our past. Keep that in mind, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.